What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino and Johnnie Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly CineTech podcast.
Welcome to CineD Focus Check, our new podcast. This is my business partner, Johnnie Bahiri.
This is Nino Leitner. Nino, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Well, this time we have a little bit of a different kind of episode. And the reason is, that's a funny reason actually, our podcast producer, Alex, might be on the Austrian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in the next few days.
Alex, do you want to be a millionaire?
Yes.
See, he's basically working on not being here anymore. So we're supporting this by letting him be on standby for that show. So this is why what you're watching now is kind of a shelf episode in a way that can go out anytime. And
that means that we will not be talking about the weekly news.
We're not talking about what happened this week. We're talking about something more general, but something that's very much of an interest to our audience. And actually the suggestion came from Alex. So Alex, what was your suggestion for us to talk about today?
Well, to maybe get to know you two better and talk about your journey, how you got into filmmaking and how you finally got here to CineD.
Okay, Johnnie, let's start with you. How did you end up holding a camera, basically?
Well, the short version or the long version?
A middle version.
The middle version. I'll try. So after finishing the army, I was recruited to be a security officer on a cruise ship. Imagine me on the love boat for 2 years, and that was really a great job. One day in Puerto Rico, there was a huge Hurricane Hugo, and we literally had to leave.
When was this? What year?
That was 19. That was 19.
Early 90s, I guess. Right?
Yeah, that was really.
So it's still analog cameras.
It was analog. It was the age of VHC and 8mm. But anyway.
VHS, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right. So we had to leave the port because of the hurricane. And the next thing, when we came back after 1 or 2 days, I took a car. It was in Puerto Rico, which is really very well known for its rainforests. I went to a rainforest. I had some time off from my security duty. And I stood there alone. The whole forest was on the floor, literally. First time that I saw something like this.
You mean the hurricane flattened everything?
Everything.
Oh.
So I took my small camera, and of course nobody had digital cameras in those days, just a normal camera. And I tried to tell a story that I could, by taking one single photo and send it back home to show them, hey, look, that's how hurricane looks like. And I couldn't tell the story. It was like nothing fit. Yeah, it was just too small to tell the big story. So the next thing that I knew, I wanted a video camera. And I asked the sailors on the boat if they can help me to get a video camera for not too much money. And they said, don't worry, we'll get you one. And the next thing that I know, I had a video camera. And I remember it was a Canon video camera, 8mm.
So analog?
No. It was the 8mm before the high 8.
Ah, okay.
This type of 8mm. And apparently this camera was all automatic. And I felt very, very quickly, that the camera is controlling me, and I didn't really like it. So I asked the sailors if they can get me another camera, one which is not fully automatic.
And they didn't kick you off the boat at some point?
No, but a week later, I had another camera. And with this one, I started to film. And you know how when you start, you literally move a camera where your eyes are. And I got seasick, not because of the sea and being on a big boat, but mostly because of watching my own material. And one of my best friends on the boat was the priest. And he was one of the only ones to have a TV in his cabin. So I literally used to film and run to his room, connect the camera, watch the footage, and get sick.
Weren't your colleagues worried that you were kept going to the priest's room?
No, not at all, actually. And yeah, that's a good question, but no, everything was fine. So just moving forward, I really liked filming, and I thought that it's very nice to tell a story by using the camera. Years later, I wanted to actually go to a filming school, and I was not accepted. And I was in a big depression for 2 hours. And after that, I decided that if the school didn't want me, and of course they don't really give you the reason, I'll just do it by myself. And I remember me asking my father for the first time ever if he knows anybody in the local TV station. And he said, I know the main driver, the chief driver. And I was like, what? How can a chief driver in a TV station can help me? And he said, and I will never forget, never estimate the power.
Underestimate, yeah.
I never underestimated the power of those people. And the next thing that I know, because obviously the chief driver knew everybody, and he contacted the E&G department, the head of the E&G department, who actually said, yeah, I need an assistant. And that was, that's how I started many, many, many years ago as an assistant in a local TV station. And I think for 1 year, people even didn't hear me. I had nothing to say. I was literally learning and observing what people are doing. And yeah, I became an assistant. And after that, a cameraman. And after that, again, I'm really rushing the story. I started to work for the BBC. That was also a complete coincidence as a freelance cameraman here in Europe. Did a lot of mini documentaries and news. Really loved that job. But at some point, of course, I had to decide if I want to stay at the BBC and work as a freelance, or together with you continue and do this business as CineD. And when it's our own business, it's a no-brainer.
When was the BBC when you were first really working on documentaries? Is this when because a lot of our audience love your mini documentaries, because that's one of the things that makes CineD special is doing real life productions, which is not so easy. And you figured out a brilliant way to do it because you always work on your own. I mean, it's like the reason why not many websites do that kind of stuff, because it's hard to pull off and it's expensive as soon as other people are involved. But you always decide to work alone on those, usually not even an assistant or a sound person or anything like that, which allows you to do that. But it's not something that a lot of people are capable of, I would say. I mean, like I'm not used to working this way. I think I could try, but I'm sure you have a million times more experience. But first part of the question is, how did you end up finding, because there's clearly a passion for documentary. Did you find this through the BBC, or was that already before?
No, that was much earlier. First of all, thank you for the compliment. I think if I don't spit blood, I don't enjoy. I need the challenge. I need to make it right. I need to create through the equipment that I have, and not. It's very easy to be a big DP when you have so many people around you. Yeah, but I think the idea of fighting for a scene, or tell a story when you're by yourself, and that's when the intimacy with the person, that's when you can feel the person. But I'll touch this in a second. I started with this because I was also working for the NHK, the Japanese television, many years ago as a cameraman. Started documentaries already then, and there are many kinds of documentaries. But what really hooked me to the whole idea is really not really talking to people, but more listening to people. Everybody has his own backpack. Everybody has a little story. And it doesn't matter if it's a small story or big story, there is a story. So by listening to the people and making them really relaxed and trust you, because at the end, they can tell their story through you. That was my mission, I guess. And that's what I really like to do. And because I'm not really working actively anymore, in the sense that I'm not getting paid to work on documentaries. I'm not doing it anymore. But in order to continue and still be connected, part of our reviews is doing those mini documentaries. So I'm very happy. very fortunate to continue working, talk to people, and go through the journey of making documentaries. And again, it would have been very easy to make it with a soundman or an assistant, but I really like to do this by myself, to find the person, to find the story, to listen. Of course, not all mini documentaries are equal. Some stories are stronger than others. There's also the element of languages, because some people can simply express themselves better in their mother tongue. So there are different challenges here, but it deserves the attention, and I like it. But I think enough.
Well, when you were working for the BBC, I mean, I know you were working for BBC World, right? For the correspondent, who's also based here in Vienna, in Austria. But were you able to? Because you were also editing those, right? Which is kind of rare, because usually when you work for a TV station, when I work for a TV station, you shoot and, you don't have really control of what an editor makes out of this at the end of the day.
Yeah. The thing is with the BBC, and again, this is a little story, and I think I was maybe one of the first ones, or maybe even the first. You know what? I'll take the credit here. I'll to work with a DSLR. Actually, it was the Canon 7D. And I remember working with Bethany Bell at that time. I think she's still the correspondent here in Vienna, but we worked together for many years. And of course, when you work on television, it has to be 50i, it has to be full HD or whatever it is. And for the first time, I worked with the Canon 7D, and I shot 25p. And of course, the whole aesthetic of the picture is completely different when you work with a DSLR and not with a full broadcast camera. And one of the great things about Bethany was she fully trusted me. Like, she knew that she's with me by hook and by crook, meaning at that time, she was responsible on finding the people and the stories, and I was dealing with everything that has to do with the picture aesthetic and sound and all of that. So we shot the piece, I edited, it went to the BBC in London, and the next thing, there was a phone call to Bethany asking, what did we shot this piece on? Literally like that. So she asked me, and I said, well, it's a DSLR, it's a new technology.
Were you worried that they were like, oh, this camera is actually cheaper than the other ones? Why is he charging that?
No, it's not about this. It's more about, in broadcast you have specifications.
Yeah, exactly,
and you have
but
to...
we know how it was at the beginning, and we were, that was one of the reasons why this website was started, because we saw the potential of these cameras where many others, like the establishment, especially in TV, but also in film, but especially in TV, were working with tiny sensor cameras and couldn't even see the potential here.
Yeah, but you still remember the days when people literally stood, they thought you're taking a photo and not a video. But long story short, the phone call came from the control room asking what we shot with. I fully explained what we did. And to my surprise, instead of saying, okay, stop it here, that's not a field for experiment, the head of the engineering department said, sounds very interesting, continue, report to us, tell us how it is. And that's exactly what I did. And a few months later, the head of engineering even asked me to establish a small group of people and share the knowledge. Because I think at that time already, producing news in general is a very expensive thing. It's a 24 hours, 7 days a week. So obviously, if correspondents can have the cameras by themselves, or cameramen can have the camera and tell the story, it's a big benefit. So that's how the whole thing started. Yeah, and that's really history. But again, I don't want to claim the glory here. I'm just saying in reality, that's what happened. And I continue, of course, with making those documentaries and so on. And you, Nino, how did you start it?
Yeah, a bit of a different story, but we ended up in the same position, I guess. Yeah. Well, I grew up in a family of graphic designers. I spent my childhood in a tiny graphic design agency, which my parents founded when I was born or shortly after. And then, I mean, the company never had more than 3 employees. It was quite small up until they retired. And I spent every waking minute there when I was not in school or learning or, out playing, whatever. I was literally at this agency.
That was not in Vienna, yeah? That was
in Innsbruck, in Tyrol, where I grew up. And, my mother originally was an illustrator, like she was drawing, and my father was, what is the English word? He was working in the printing company, but basically at that time when they founded this, the job of a graphic designer, end of 70s, beginning of 80s, didn't really exist. So any graphical designs in that way were made by companies working at the printing companies, right? So you literally, that was even before you had desktop publishing, like just before actually, early 80s, just before the Mac actually came out. That really changed everything. And then, my father would, and I didn't, that I was not even born or just born when that happened, but he would literally put the letters together for the printing. Yeah, that's how it worked. And then I remember things like, lettre set?
Sure.
The rubbing. So we had like these huge sheets of those rubber, what is it, like you needed to rub the letters onto a piece of paper to make in all kinds of fonts, and it were really expensive. And I played with them as a kid, the leftovers that they didn't need. I was making drawings. I always drew a lot and painting a lot and spending my time there also, and then when the first computers came along, I think the first computer, I don't know, end of 80s. I was born in 82, so it probably was like 7 years old when they got the first Mac. And at that time, everybody I'm 41 now, so everybody who's about my age or older will understand that Apple was really the complete underdog until around, I would say, the early 2000s, or around 2000, just when Steve Jobs came back. So you were the weirdo in class when you were, working with a Mac at home. It was also completely out of grasp for most people because it's really expensive. You would never buy this as a private thing. My parents took out a loan to buy their first computers and paid it off for over years. Much more expensive than a car even, I think, at the time. Yeah, it was crazy. But it increased productivity so much because you had a graphical user interface and you were able to really, had freehand, which is the predecessor of Illustrator and all those, and InDesign and so on. But especially freehand was like the main working tool. And then I kind of shifted my creativity as a kid during school to the computer in a way. And I became a total nerd. Really, I had the first computer that I got, I was like 12, 13 years old, which was an old Mac from them. Because, of course, the obsolescence was so fast at the time, even more than now. Now you can work with a computer that's 5 years old, and you can edit even 4K stuff with it. Or, like at that time, every new generation would give it such a huge productivity boost. And also you couldn't use a lot of new software anymore on the old computers. So it was really kind of had to be replaced every 2 years because it just was like, but it still made sense. Because you could increase productivity so much. So the old computer just ended up with me. And I started playing with these. They were much too slow to edit video. I already had an interest in video. And of course, my dad wanted me to take over the graphic design business. Yeah. And I wasn't sure at the time. Video wasn't really a thing. And it was really, I think it was 99 or something like that, 1999, when the second generation of the iMac came out. So I think Steve Jobs came back, in 97? I even had the first generation iMac, the turquoise little one, which was, it was nice, but it was more a style than function, to be honest. It had a USB port and they got rid of it was the first internet thing at the time, which, like you were supposed to get all the information into the computer without a disk drive, which was crazy at the time. You only had the tray for the CD, not even a CD burner. You just literally could feed stuff in, but not get it out. No FireWire. So, when the internet was really slow. And then the second generation came out, and that had the Firewire port. And Firewire changed everything because that got me onto video. And I did shoot some music videos for fun with friends, like during high school. When I think about it, my A levels when I was 18, like I did in informatics, and I did video editing on the Mac on that iMac DV using iMovie, one of the first versions of iMovie, and already playing with Final Cut was already there. And of course, like a pirated copy of Final Cut, just playing around with it. And now in hindsight, it's like, oh, it actually makes sense that, like video was really the passion already then. And and after that, it only progressed, and I started.
But you went to study.
I went after that. Yeah, after I also had to go to the army, and during the army, I already looked for universities that I was interested in, and I chose one which was also in a different city in Salzburg, and I went there because it was a media school, which had a focus on film also. And to be honest, like, I also chose that because I didn't completely want to abandon actually my parents' wish to take over the company at some point. I wanted to check if maybe I can convert it into what I wanted to be, which is more like with a moving image. But at that time, it was so early. It was completely, Innsbruck is a relatively small city, and I couldn't see, I had no experience with film production. So let's see. I ended up studying there, met a lot of people that I was in touch with over a long period of time after that. But then I also went to England during those 4 years, and I really discovered I was already doing some commercial work on the side, like for clients of my parents, more like some graphic design work, but increasingly a little bit moving picture. Mini DV was the thing at that time, that was even before HDV. And then I bought, my first camera was the DV.
Let me guess.
Yeah.
Let me guess.
Yeah.
Panasonic.
Yep.
DVX.
Yep.
100.
Exactly. We actually have it here at the office. I still have it. I should have brought it here. I didn't think about it.
The first 24p camera.
Exactly.
It's a legend.
Yeah. I spent all my money on this, and I bought it at the end of my studies, 2004, 5, and I filmed my thesis film, which was a master thesis film. I of course had to write like 100 pages of whatever. And I made a master thesis film, a documentary in England. And I really discovered my passion for documentary when I was doing it started with an exchange semester in England. And I was just curious about something. And I was curious, why are there so many surveillance cameras everywhere? And why is nobody complaining about that? Where the British people are very much critical about a lot of government stuff. Like, for example, there is no general registry, like there's no registry of who lives where. Like here, it's very normal that you're registered with your address and the government knows where you live. They don't have that in America. They also don't have that, but in the UK also don't have that because they think it's an invasion of their privacy. On the other hand, the omnipresence of surveillance cameras, nobody seemed to bother about this. So I really went really deep, and I spent 1.5, 2 years almost on the subject, like researching, interviewing criminologists, sociologists, and went all around England, came back after the exchange semester and made this into a 1-hour documentary. And that was my starting point. And the thing is, after I came back, I moved to Vienna for an internship, and I never moved away in a way. Like but I knew nobody. I knew 0 people, and I knew I was interested going into documentaries, but I knew nobody. So what I did, I spent, I think it was 2007, when after the film was finished, the whole year submitting this thing to all the film festivals I could find on the face of the earth. And then it was also accepted in a couple, like 15 or something. And I really traveled around just showing the film, England, in even Sao Paulo in Brazil, and many other places. And I made contacts, and I tried to get into the whole documentary game because I was already doing commercial stuff. That was like, easy in a way because I grew up with this. I knew this commercial world. not that I shot so many huge budget commercials. I did a few big ones, but most of them is like corporate films, image films. A lot of the stuff that a lot of our audience also do, like the small corporate stuff,
As
medium
a freelance,
corporate
you have
stuff.
to do
Exactly. Some of them were bigger, became bigger, but it was really never my passion. I knew it was better for the money, but I really wanted to do documentaries. And then I managed to get those contacts and I got into this, and I immediately went self-employed after university. I was never employed by a company, and that was something that never scared me because I grew up like this. I knew nothing else, right? Like my parents were always self-employed, and I was never in a family of people who went 9 to 5.
It's always best to have one stupid boss, no?
Huh?
It's always nice to have one stupid boss, which is myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's with all the ups and downs of, I knew all the ups and downs of being self-employed and how difficult it is. But I think the benefits outweigh the downsides here in many cases. And of course the job, I find it very hard being being creative in an employed job, like what we are doing, who's even employed doing, like documentaries these days. I mean, even the big TV channels don't employ creative teams, either directors or camera people or DPs. They hire them. They outsource as much as they can, even the big ones, and that's always kind of been the case. So I didn't even think twice about this. So I immediately went freelance, and then,
But you're still really working a lot with broadcasters. You like the engagement.
Yeah, not a lot, not nearly as much as I used to. Also, because our beast grew so big that CineD demands so much of our time. But I think it's important to, the way you do it with the mini documentaries that are part of the reviews, I still do external work, and I try to as much as that's possible. But sometimes it's not possible. But increasingly, it's more possible to bring equipment on actual jobs that we are testing. Of course, it can't be something completely untested. I wouldn't bring a camera I know nothing about and the camera that we sometimes only have for a week. Yeah, I can't bring on a job stuff. But sometimes I'm testing a series of anamorphic lenses on a long-term project that's being shot over the course of 6 months, which is ending up a cinema documentary. And that's, of course, a really in-depth review in the end, because I'm literally working every day with those lenses when I'm shooting.
Do you still like what you do?
Yeah. I like. If it's a project where, you know how it is. If you work for broadcasters, sometimes or production companies that work for broadcasters, they sometimes call you up for 1 or 2 shooting days, and where you're just a small thing in a bigger production. I'm not doing those things anymore. It's good to learn, it's good to, I think it's important for everybody to work like this. But of course you don't have much control over what the final thing looks like. And it's much better to, that's really the DP, to be the one that defines what the picture looks like. But it's not easy to get to this position, because you need to build up trust with directors, producers, and usually then it's the same people that keep on hiring you. It's not the producers. Well, it's more like directors that want that. The producers, they would just call up who's available for these things. So that's what I enjoy. But the jobs where it's like a 1 or 2 day off thing, it's not interesting.
A bit of a, it's a provocative question. Do you know what happened to cameramen? I'm asking because those days everybody's a DP. Everybody's a big director of photography. I'm a cameraman. That's how I grew up, and I'm still regarding now. In some countries, you have to fill up your profession. I'm a cameraman. What happened to cameramen? Everybody's a DP. Everybody wants a shortcut.
Yeah, that's true. In the old days, people would start as an assistant and then work their way up before they actually get a chance to be a DP. Which is like, what is a DP? It's somebody who creates the image, right? And that means not just holding the camera and just pointing it somewhere, but really crafting the light and deciding even the visuals and stuff like that. And if we're totally honest, many people who claim that they are DPs are not actually even in charge of creating the entire visual aesthetic of something. So yeah, I mean, I understand both sides, because it's not like when we started, when we were before DSLRs, and like the ability to creatively change your image was very limited, right? You had a fixed lens, a zoom lens on your camera. You had no shallow depth of field, and you were
filled with baked color already.
Exactly. You had no log. You were using a fixed picture profile, and then you maybe had 1 or 2 lights with you, and that's it. And then nobody back then would have called themselves director of photography, because the difference between somebody doing this versus somebody shooting feature films was enormous. But now this difference is becoming smaller, which doesn't mean, I think, that everybody can call themselves DP, because for a lot of the work, like if you're a camera operator in a multi-camera setup, I mean, of course, you're not a DP.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pity. I mean, it's an age that everybody wants to become somebody, and very fast. It's really good to be somebody. But the essence of crafting, like to know what you do and learn, because for example, I've been an assistant cameraman for quite a few years, up to the point that I went to my boss at the TV station that I was working at, asking him if he has no intention to promote me, meaning if I'm not good enough to become a cameraman. And he was laughing, and he said, "Are you crazy? You are just the only assistant that the cameraman can rely on. That's why I leave you as an assistant, and the others are, they can become cameramen. I have to employ them. So your time will come." And that's exactly what happened. Yeah, of course, I later on became a cameraman, but being assistant was such an eye-opener, working with different cameramen to see how they lit up scenes, how they treat people, how they treat the staff, how they treat the whole scene. That was essential for my own development. And I feel that today many people are just simply skipping this part, which is a pity. There is nothing wrong being an assistant.
But to be honest, it's also very difficult to get to that position. I mean, I sometimes feel like, because there's so much more motion picture video work being done, I think it's almost easier to get a shooting gig than to be an assistant. And when I say assistant, I don't mean a sound assistant. I mean like a
camera assistant.
Camera assistant, because being a camera assistant you only have on bigger productions, like on commercials and stuff like that.
This is now. In the old days, it was different.
Exactly.
Even a news team used to have the producer, the director,
but when
the driver.
I mean, there we see, I guess, a bit of our generation difference, because when I started, it was the normal TV crews were already 3 people. It was the producer/director, sound person, and the shooter.
Yeah, that's
and there was no way to get into this.
That's the 18 years difference between us, I guess.
And usually there's very rarely anybody going from. Well, actually, I know a few who actually managed to do this, but it's still rare to do sound first and then be the shooter, right? I mean, so I kind of what I made. I came in through the commercial thing, so I got that. I really never was really like an assistant, like a camera assistant, to be honest. But I ended up being a camera operator in multi-camera shoots. And that's when I learned a lot of stuff on bigger sets and bigger productions, concerts, all those kind of things, and commercials also. But I was the operator. I was sometimes not the DP. And then through this, I learned light, and I learned setting up a scene. Yeah.
So let me ask you another question. Would you recommend people to go to a filming school?
To film school?
Or not?
I think the funny thing is, when I think about what I learned in that film/media school, I mean, in England, I really did a 1 year, was really just film school with a lot of theory as well, but also practice. And in Austria, it was like a mixture of media. And what I really recommend, if you're young, I would still recommend people to try to get in, but not because of what you learn. It's because of the people you meet. Yeah. Because that's what sticks with you. I mean, if I look at we do every day now, what I have to do on a set, I learned very little of that in film school on a practical level. I did learn some stuff, but that was probably 5% or 10% of everything I learned there. But there were a lot of other useful things that I learned, I think. And the main thing is, when I moved to Vienna, I knew nobody, and the only people I knew who were kind of in the industry were the people I studied with. And some of them actually could, doing completely different things now, or went into different areas of media. But I really recommend people to try and get in, because if otherwise the way in can be much harder. And we know, we see this every day from people who apply to CineD, or people who move to Vienna or whatever, and want to work with us, or want to be interns. I think they have a much harder time, because very often you have this passion for the moving image, and you don't know anybody. And even if the university might not, it's just that's really just the foundation. But even below the foundation, it's more like getting to know the other, like construction workers in a way. Yeah. It's not even the foundation, but you have to get to know other construction workers to build a foundation with. And I know a lot of people who met people at film school and then stuck with them, and then actually made their first short film project even out of film school sometimes. And that's great for that.
For me, it's only about the connections, like you said. Otherwise, I guess I would not spend even 1 minute in a film school, because every minute that you are sitting and studying, somebody else is actually working and practicing in the field. That's my opinion.
That's true, yeah.
So I would prefer to try to get into the industry and work. And later on, if you feel like doing some courses just to enhance knowledge in the things that you want to, really that you have the interest or passion, that's what I would personally recommend. And filming school, let's say differently. Now we're in an age, everybody's very lucky. You can literally pick up your mobile phone or camera or whatever you have, because a tool is just a tool, and do your own stuff. And even you don't have to fight for a spot on TV. You can just do this on YouTube. There are so many other ways in social media to publish your work and get love and attention to what you do. So this is a bit of an old way.
Yes, I agree. I think a lot of people are starting film school with the wrong expectations. You think you go there, especially the really tough ones to get into, or the expensive ones, especially in the US, you have to pay so much money to get in, and then to be there, and then people expect that, your path is paved for Hollywood. And in the good ones, you will get also the connections, but it's also it's the connections. You will get the connections they will never replace talent or dedication. I always think talent is overrated. Talent is important, but it's really just the willingness to, work your ass off, basically. You need that. If you don't have that, just go to a different industry, become something else. I don't want to say another job, because, it's like in general, just you have to work really, really hard to get in, because it is so many people want to get in. And the film school will not help you with that. But what they will help you is meeting the right people. And the really good film schools will also connect you outside of your class in a way, because even your teachers will be people who are active in the field, and so on. But it's also, apart from that, the only other thing I think where it's helping, it broadens your horizon, because you very easily get, if you only teach yourself, I think too early can move into one direction specifically, even within our industry. You know what I mean? It's like, I found what I still think of from film school are sometimes what I learned about classical Hollywood films, for example. Like I had a whole class on classical Hollywood cinema in England, and that was the guy who made this. He was an author. He was also brilliant, and he watching those films and learning why they were made, how they are made, and how that influenced our storytelling of today that help me with, like crafting images and stories. It's broadening your horizon. It's something, because you're exposed to things that you might immediately kind of dismiss. And of course, I mean, maybe 50% of what you're exposed to are things you might not need anymore later on. But I agree in terms of learning the craft itself. That's not where you learn it. You learn it on set. You learn it when you're working. And I can only recommend to people to do as much passion and unpaid work as possible. But that doesn't mean that you should work for free for when somebody else gets money,
Of course.
Because I'm an admin of a Facebook group here in Austria about filmmakers, and there's constantly that thing. People are constantly looking for people to work on their short film and so on. And of course, those things are not paid. But sometimes people are also looking for, people to work for free on something where they get money. I was like, why? I always say, either get paid nothing or the full rate.
Exactly.
There should be nothing in between. Either you work for free or you work for a full rate. Don't discount your own work, I think.
Yeah,
you can discount the equipment, but it's
a different topic altogether.
Yeah, but still, it's like if you're starting out, and if you don't have any context, and maybe you didn't go to film school, I can only recommend look in your local area where are other passionate people that do a short film or something for fun, or a music video or wherever, where you can just be on set, just be the fly on the wall maybe, or be a PA. Being PA is the best to, just do the hard legwork in a way, but also get exposed to all the different areas on a set. I think that's really important. That's what I did a lot. I learned a lot in my internship here in Vienna, which was a big commercial production company. And they did these high budget commercials, still shot on 35mm film for some of the biggest brands. And I was a nobody. I had to do everything. I was the first on set and the last to leave. And I was with some others, responsible for all the dirty work in a way. But you get exposed to so many people. And you can do this for free also on student sets, with the downside, of course, that everybody is not, nobody's an expert there. But I think that's the way to get experience. And also what I always liked are those to learn, actually. The problem with free stuff is also it often doesn't get finished. I've been part of many projects also later in my career where because of it's a human rights issue or something, you work for free, but then the whole production is, no budget or is paid for by the director or whatever. And they don't have it doesn't have the long-term goal or whatever. They can't actually fulfill the goal of finishing it because, of course, at some point they need to earn money again. So I have so many projects that, I just end up in a drawer where oh my God, this was amazing. And then it was just, never finished, but also especially student projects and projects from students that they start after university when they don't have to actually submit it anymore. That happens so often. And I think people have to be really, really careful with this. And what helped me with this and some friends at the time, I took part in so many of those 24, 36, 48-hour filming competitions, sometimes global ones, where you get a topic and you have 36 hours to finish a short film.
We should do one of those with our audience. Actually.
Exactly. And it's great because it's you have to do everything from zero to really submitting the finished edit within this time frame. And it's hard and it's no sleep, but something is finished at the end. And you always at the end you're never happy because of course there's always still something you want to change, but we all know it's never happening. So once you submit, it's done. And I managed with many others at the time to submit quite a couple of very nice short films where when you look at them afterwards, you're wow, we did this in 36 hours from nothing. That's amazing. I can only recommend that. And if you get part of a team during this, it's a very, how long it takes. You can pitch in, you can get to know a lot of people you didn't know before. And a lot of the people I knew or got to know at that time, I ended up working with later on, because I knew you really, in this pressure environment, you know if somebody
Who is capable.
who's capable and who isn't exactly. So that was a really good experience. I think that's actually the best film school for me. It's like 24 or 48, whatever, hour filmmaking competitions. Yeah.
Alex, any other questions? You ask one question and we answered for the last, 40, 50 minutes?
Yes. How did you meet?
Wow.
Well, actually, I think the short version. You want to answer, or should I answer?
No, maybe your memory serves you better.
Well, yeah, like we mentioned in the first episode, we used to be 3 business partners, and the short story is that we kind of did the same thing in the same city, but didn't really know each other, which was funny. Like, you did already your mini documentaries on your Vimeo channel. I had my own, because when I moved to Vienna, like I said, I had no contacts. So I did those filming competitions, and that was really the early days of DSLRs. I started my own blog for a year or so and started reviewing accessories for the T2i or 550D. And 1 or 2 of those videos were really successful. And then I think our former third business partner even reported about this or whatever, and he was in film school, so he introduced us to each other, and then the 3 of us basically did Cinema 5D together, because we were all kind of doing the same things in a different way, and I think it turned out it complements each other quite well.
I mean, we rented a place, and each one of us was operating independently, completely, when Cinema 5D was just really, really a side job.
Yeah, the original idea was just to share an office, and then we're like, oh, there's this website, and we should fill it, and then it became a real business, and so on. Yeah, so
the rest is history.
That's wonderful. And one last question from me: is there a piece of work that you have produced that you are most proud of?
Wow. It's almost like summarizing I'm in this business from 1993. That's summarizing too many years. I can't point at one project. I feel very lucky to be with people, to talk to people. I think people in our industry are a very special breed altogether. I mean, there is a sense of community, and I wouldn't have done anything different. I can't think of working in a bank. I can't think of doing any 9-to-5 job. I can't think of not being
having you in a bank.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky with what I do, and I feel very lucky with the people I meet along the way. Yeah, it's just a wonderful experience. So I can't point and say this particular project was amazing. And for you?
But maybe isn't there one of your mini documentaries which you're very proud of for whatever reason? Doesn't need to be the visuals, but something where you maybe exposed a person that you think was really deserving of that?
There are a few of those. What I like, because many times I do stay in contact with those people. Yeah. And to hear afterwards that their work was acknowledged, or their place that I featured was suddenly more people came, or if you feature an artist and suddenly he or she can sell more paints.
But just tell us 1 or 2, because we also want to, the people who are watching listening or watching our podcast should, have the chance to actually see them.
Okay, so, oh wow, really. That's difficult.
While you think, I can answer the question.
Okay.
Most proud of, very difficult question. I mean, a lot of the productions I'm very proud of. I don't have the rights to, like, I can't, just point somebody to a website. And some of them are in German as well. So it's like, I recently showed a documentary like 2 years ago about very difficult subject of Nazi experiments that were done in part of Austria, which is now a hospital, and that was a very tough project. Of course, I mean, we had a lot of interviews. Unfortunately, there's not many people left from around that time, of course, because now it's so long ago, and that was a neglected part of that part of the history. You know, like there's many movies about concentration camps and the plight of in the Holocaust and everything that, but about the experiments that they did on those who had no lobby in a way, like no relatives, no voice. That they're really forgotten. And we're talking about children here. We're talking about retired people, and we did a cinema documentary on this with a same producer director I'm working with now on a different project. But unfortunately, I can't. It's not online. But another thing that was a little bit connected to CineD was a documentary I shot in South Africa on rhino preservation in 2016, and that was a really, really cool project. We'll put the link in the show notes for people who are interested. And this was also supported by two brands at the time, Zeiss and G Technology, which has become SanDisk Professional now. And that was really great because that was one of those rare chances where, like one of our former writers, actually, Nick Divišek, he's South African, half Austrian. He used to write for the site and he lives in South Africa. And he used to work in a rhino sanctuary, and I've never been to South Africa before. And he has this production company with another guy, and they have a Phantom Flex. And it was like, I mean, the whole starting point was, we have a Phantom Flex 4K, let's do something together for CineD. And we were starting to think, what excuse can I find to go to South Africa to film wildlife in super slow motion? And then I talked to those brands, and it just happened to fit really well with two products that they introduced. So what we did is we shot a little commercials for them in the wild, and of course we used the products on the productions. So we had a nice behind the scenes. But they had no say in the actual documentary, and we were able to do a full, 15-minute, like a short documentary on, saving rhinos in South Africa, like how difficult it is and what the challenges are of those people who are behind this effort, like to protecting them from, like being killed by hunters and so on. And that was really, I mean, that's, if there's one perfect example of where I can see brand money combined with a real story, that's it. I would love to, I would love us to be able to do much more of this. It's not always so easy because very often, of course, I mean, first of all, this is not a review, of course. It's something where, you end up with a nice production and you get a little commercial for the product, but it's not a review of the product, of course not. But it's still a perfect example because the brand can say, we supported this honestly, high-flying cause in a way, and still got a cheap commercial out of it, basically, because it's cheap compared to an actual commercial. Yeah, so I'm proud of that. We can put the link in the show notes. Yeah, but now you had some time to think. So what are the stories you're proud of?
All my sons, really. No, I'm saying all those mini documentaries are. There is no one specific. I can't. I mean,
come on,
no, really. I mean, it's. We've been doing this for so many years. I can tell you that my wife, she loves the A7S3 mini documentary with Kana, who is a wonderful person from Japan, and one of her passions is to run in mountains.
It's that one, right? Low light sample footage.
Oh God, that's what I mean. There's so much. If you forward a little bit more.
Well, we have to add that.
Yes, this is the one. Yeah.
So we have to add that very often and I think we can maybe do better with this. Your mini documentaries are buried in a YouTube video which has the cover image of the camera, which is kind of like,
Yeah.
it's very difficult for us because we when we do camera reviews, we get the camera often before it's released, and then of course we have to kind of work for that date to get everything finished. But then the featured image is not really transcending the content of the video, because a lot of people expect when they see the featured image of a camera that they just see you or me or whoever to talk about that camera for 20 minutes and not actually see more than a few pretty pictures, but an actual real story.
There's also, we were very innocent at the beginning. First, like putting videos on Vimeo, and then YouTube with the wrong featured images. This is something also learning by doing, and we never looked back. But maybe it's worth making a section that people can literally watch those mini documentaries, not because of the reviews per se, but just to see two main things. First of all, to meet the people that we featured. And the second thing is if they can be inspired by the idea of what can be done alone by yourself when it comes to images and sound, it's really nice. And in this particular case, as I said, Kana is a very special person, and it was very nice to document her, or literally running after her in the mountains. Yeah, that was very nice.
But I find funny that you hate working with gimbals, right? You never work with gimbals. I work with gimbals a lot, and this would be it's like the first thing I would do is like use a gimbal on this.
Well, gimbal for me is very good on, let's say, commercials. Yeah, but on documentaries, that's for me. On documentaries, I want a little bit the movement. My body movement is part of the story also, and I don't want it to be completely smooth. Yeah, I want it actually to have some of me inside the shot when I breathe, when I move, and so on. And that's why I never use gimbals. And the other reason is it's literally a matter of weight. And when I pack, what doesn't fit into one bag simply stays behind. It's very simple. Yeah, very cautious.
Well, that's one thing we have been wanting to do for a long time, a little mini course on how to pack lightly. And
it will come.
Well, that's the only film school we recommend is mz.com. Then you can pick the right courses for what you need. All right. Thank you. I think that's plenty for today. And thank you, Johnny, for this little history lesson.
Thank you, Nino. I mean, only now I'm realizing that there is a bit of an age gap between us.
A little bit. I'm older, but I eat better. No, just kidding. Thank you, everybody, and stay tuned. Come back for the next episode of Focus Check on CineD, and you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, YouTube, and many other places. Basically everywhere where you can find podcast. Thank you.
And of course, if you have any questions, just drop us a line. We love the engagement.
Podcast@cined.com. We're reading all the questions and we will address them in every episode. Thanks.
Thank you.